What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA. The biggest stories, the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we're going to be talking to Kane Pitman of Locked On Bucks as Giannis Antetokounmpo makes his return to the Milwaukee Bucks lineup on Christmas Day, no longer in the health and safety protocols, and Giannis had a dominant Christmas Day game to show for it. Also, who stepped up while Giannis was out? And Dante DiVincenzo making his return to the Milwaukee Bucks roster after rehabbing his injury that saw him sidelined during last year's playoffs. But first, a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar, because look, this holiday season, you can grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar or even better than a candy bar. That's Built Bar, filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat. High in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. So many flavors to choose from. You're gonna have a hard time deciding what to pick, right? Raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, cookies and cream, my personal favorite, coconut brownie chunk. You can't go wrong with a single bar on their menu. These are protein bars that taste like candy bars. They're so incredible, and you can check them out. Just visit built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off of anything site-wide. That's anything, protein bars, powders, just whatever they've got on their website, you can check it out. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Joining us now is Kane Pitman from Locked On Bucks. Kane, we had an incredible slate of games, all throughout Christmas Day in the NBA, but that Bucks Celtics game, right? The Celtics were, dominant for stretches of the game. It kind of looked like they were going to, walk away with this one. And then Giannis had other plans, right? He made his return to the Bucks lineup from the health and safety protocols and kind of looked like he was ramping up in the first half and then was just absolutely dominant in the second half. What goes through your mind when you watch a Giannis takeover like that?
Yeah, it's hard to really say. I mean, he's had multiple games this season where he's had scoreless quarters, or looks like he's struggling early in the game, and then he has the ability to completely take over a game. But I think the biggest thing that we've seen with Giannis over the last couple of seasons, and particularly the last 12 months here, including the postseason run, is there's a big stage. If there is a big game, if it's against a rival, which is kind of hard when you look at some of the postseason series they've had in recent seasons, Giannis always wants to deliver, and he does not let the team down or let anyone down and have a quiet game in these big moments. So I wasn't totally shocked that he did that, but I guess when you consider only a few hours before the game, we weren't sure if he was even going to play. It did make the performance more remarkable.
Maybe we can safely say this now, Kane. Is Giannis the best player in the league? Or if we're not ready to say that he's the best player, can we at least safely say he's the most dominant player in the league?
Yeah, I think yesterday, Christmas Day, in terms of to play through at different levels of it is physical, which we saw, for instance, last year in the NBA Finals with the knee injury. Now we saw it from the health safety protocols, an ability to mentally will himself to the line, to will himself to the next level and be able to, at that MVP level that we've seen, I think separates him from other players. You spoke about physical dominance and the way he can overwhelm other teams. We certainly saw that with the Celtics yesterday in the Christmas Day game. But I don't clearly the best player in the NBA, but I think you're right. I think he's the most physically dominant, and I would argue that he's the mentally toughest as well.
Jrue Holiday really kind of stepped up his level of play with Giannis out, even Middleton missing a handful of games. Jrue had a stretch where, that 4-game stretch, I mean, he had a 40-point game in there. He just kind of really picked up his level of play. I'm sure Bucks fans appreciate him plenty and what he brings to the table, but do you think at times we forget just how good Jrue Holiday can be now that he's in that third banana role next to Giannis and Middleton?
Yeah, it's interesting because even Bucks fans will tweet at me or they'll comment on our podcast feed and ask when he has these big games when Giannis is out, why doesn't he do this more often? But you're right. I think it is part of being the third option on the team. And you have Chris Middleton, who has the ball in his hands a lot, who has the ball in his hands a lot. And I think more than anything, it speaks to the unselfishness of Jrue Holiday, that he's happy to fit in with these guys. He's happy to play his role. We know what he does on the defense side of the ball. But it is nice knowing that you're this guy that can legitimately take over a game offensively if you need him to, and he's certainly done that when Giannis has been out of the lineup.
So do you want to see Bucks fans maybe pump the brakes a little bit on some of the Jrue Holiday frustrations? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
I wouldn't even say it's frustration. I think it's fun to see Jrue play in that aggressive offensive role that sometimes I think people want to see it a little bit more often, but it's just difficult. They've all spoke about it. Chris and Giannis have all spoke about the fact that even now it's been a season, but it still feels like they're still figuring out, okay, when is it my turn to go? When is it your turn to go? How do we work in together? It's remarkable to say that it still feels like they have room for improvement, but it does feel like it's the case.
Now, Giannis wasn't the only one making his return to the Bucks lineup. Dante DiVincenzo made it back to the Bucks lineup after his, rehab, the injury that he took, had, during last year's playoffs. How good was it just to see him back out there for the Bucks again?
Yeah, he's like the forgotten guy of the lineup because he only played in that first round series last year. And because the Bucks did what they did, I think it does diminish what he had produced for the team during the season. He was an every night starter. He's a guy that since he's come into the league, Budenholzer's had him in the rotation. I think, again, just another depth piece with Grayson Allen, who is fitting into that starting role really nicely. I think we'll probably see Dante, if he can stay healthy, if he can run himself into a bit of shape here, I think we'll probably see him come into that starting role. But it was nice. I mean, it wasn't the perfect game. There was clearly some rust there and probably a little bit of nerves that had been a while since he played. But I think it was nice to just see him finally get out there because he was on the eve return a week ago, and then he entered the health and safety protocols as well. So it was kind of a false start for his return, but I'll see it on Christmas.
Seemingly every player has entered health and safety protocols at some point this season, so it doesn't surprise me that he was on the cusp of return, then the protocols, then actually gets to make his debut again for this Bucks team. But a couple other names I want to throw your way. DeMarcus Cousins and Wesley Matthews being added to this Bucks team earlier this month. A couple veterans, a couple more depth pieces, as you've mentioned before. What has their impact been like for this Bucks team? And have you seen enough out of either one of them yet that, would illustrate or kind of give them the opportunity to potentially maybe carve out a rotation spot moving forward?
Yeah, we'll start with Wes, a guy that's pretty familiar to the Bucks organization. He had that 1 year in Los Angeles, which didn't really go down for anyone. I don't think his time with the Lakers was kind of forgettable, but I think because there was a lot of questions, well, what does Wes have left in the tank? Is he going to be a guy that can actually play legitimate minutes? And like most players, Bucks roster, we're trying to look at it from the playoff lens or through the playoff lens. And can they be a guy that you can have on the floor in the postseason? I think what we're seeing is the answer is probably yes. The Bucks are still trying to figure out who is their small ball lineup, I guess. Who are the four guys that are going to play alongside Giannis if he's at center? Can Wesley Matthews still be the versatile defender that he was years ago, where he'll defend twos, he'll defend fours, he can defend guys a little bit bigger than him? It looks like he can. Wesley Matthews has been impressive so far, no doubt about that. And as far as Boogie goes, Jackson, you saw a bit of Boogie last year. I think the one that I have to give him credit for is that you can tell that he really desperately just wants to have an impact. He desperately wants to stick in the NBA and have his opportunity to play again. So it's been fun to see him out there. He's very emotional. He's very passionate when he's out on the floor. The question remains whether he's a guy that legitimately will hang on this roster towards the postseason, or it is just a guy that's filling a bit of a void with Brook Lopez out of the lineup. Games where he looked pretty damn good. We've seen other games where he was just a foul machine, looked a little bit slow. So there's more questions around Boogie Cousins, I think, than Wes Matthews. But seeing Boogie Cousins play well is a little bit of a feel-good story. I think most people want to see him do well.
It's funny you say, we've seen games where Boogie's played incredibly well, and then, where he's been a foul machine. That happened both stints against the Houston Rockets, where he, had the insane fouling in the first meetup, and then had his revenge game in the second meetup against my Houston Rockets. But Kane, when fully healthy, is there any team in the association that this Bucks team should be afraid of, or are they still the team to beat in your eyes?
Well, I don't know if that they would be afraid of anyone, but I do think that there's a number of teams at the top of the NBA. Brooklyn, they've been going through their own stuff, which everyone knows about, and obviously COVID has been a big impact on the last few weeks. But Brooklyn are clearly the team in the East that I think are right up there with Milwaukee, and then you have Golden State out west. I think both of those teams are I think both of those teams are legitimate contenders. So I personally would have those 4 teams above the chasing back right now. And I think all 4, I don't think right now any of those 4 winning. If you told me one of those 4 teams were going to win it, it certainly wouldn't shock me for sure. But I think just based on the Bucks playoff run last year, they didn't have what moving. They were a 3 seed. They had to win on the road. They were trailing in multiple series. I don't think that they would fear anyone, but certainly they should be respecting those teams up the top, no doubt.
Kane, you're going to have us covered for everything Milwaukee Bucks over at Locked On Bucks. Appreciate you having the time to come on Locked On NBA with me.
Yeah, anytime, man. Thank you.